All right, well, we'll go ahead and at least get this meeting started. So September 13th, it is 4:03 p.m. Can I get a roll call of planning commission members present, please? And actually, I'm sorry, I keep saying roll call because that's just years and years and years of practice, but I will list those out. Planning Commissioner Tritz, Howard Tritz, Abby Dahlman.
Here.
Bryce Ehrlich.
Here.
Aaron Palin. I think I saw her on here.
You're muted.
I see her. I see her hand. And then Commissioner Lupe Bobadilla.
Here.
Great. Okay, and at this time, we'll go ahead and add Lupe as a voting member for tonight's hearing. Okay, I have, County Commissioners. Commissioner Mudge?
Here.
Commissioner Marcella?
Here.
And Commissioner Fiedler? Okay. Do we have any changes or additions to the agenda at this point? Okay. We have minutes that were provided for, this says 8/23. I thought the ones I just got were for 8/9.
They are.
Okay. So we actually will adjust this to say August 9th. We have minutes that were sent out for August 9th. Did everybody have a chance to look those over? All right, do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes for August 9th.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor of approving August 9th minutes? Aye.
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 Thank you. Okay, new business is file 21-24, which is the LDC amendment for safety services facility. I'm going to let Ann start us off on this because I'm not sure. I know there was some dialogue with the commissioners on this, so I will let you start this off.
Sure. Thank you so much. Yes, this is file 2124 for code amendment proposal to add to chapter 9 in definitions, a definition for safety services facility, and then to add use specific standards relevant to that defined use. This is a use specified under institutional and civic in the land use table. So it is a current recognizable use. What this further does is define, provide a definition for a facility and give standards by which to do a review of any proposal for use within the county. It does not, this code amendment is not suggesting any changes to where these can be located, conditionally prohibited, or as a use by right. Those would all remain the same under this proposed change. And I think staff really pointed out that adding use specific standards would be a goal for staff on all uses. It provides a standard and a measure that is equal and uniform and ensures that we've got a good evaluation, an equal evaluation of uses as they come in to perform within the county. So use-specific standards are a good addition to our code, as are definitions. So why is this proposal a bit unique? And why is it being done by an applicant different than the county? Where typically is where you see the code amendments come forth, something that we have vetted internally as a need within our code. The applicant is wanting to carve out a unique opportunity proposed in an application that is pending for subdivision. And that is that these uses could be site-specific enough to be located on tracks and not lots. So what this opportunity and the areas that I've highlighted is that it refers to within the language to be able to identify these on lots as well as tracks. And so tracks may not always meet the same dimensional standards, nor in our code particularly, we say that well and septic systems have to be at a minimum on 2.5 acres. Actually we give a little bit more latitude if there's centralized water in a septic system. But the minimum lot size in the recreational zone district where this applicant is proposing development is a 3-acre minimum. This speaks specifically to a tract within that development that doesn't meet the 2.5 acres or the 3. So this, the kind of unique caveat of this code amendment being brought forward is that this expands the use onto areas known as tracts, usually recognized as areas for the common use within a subdivision. And had this gone, the development application gone through a PUD, those are the kind of things that are vetted through that process. So this is coming to us as a code amendment with use-specific standards and a definition. But the caveat is that it would allow this use on something different than a conforming lot that meets subdivision regulations. So, or dimensional standards, the zone district dimensional standards, moreover. So I have provided a bit of discussion about that and the criteria by which the findings must be made, which are outlined in the staff report. I provided the applicant's response to those and staff's response to those. Provided 2 motions, a motion for approval and a motion for denial. The other thing that came up in some discussion today is that whereas a discussion was had with legal in kind of a peripheral matter, this language, to be fully transparent, has not been vetted through a legal review. We had a conversation about kind of the basis of this, but we did not, that has not been performed or provided. And so I just want to share that with the group in case there's any questions about that. We did talk about kind of the overall idea and basis of bringing the code amendment forward, but we haven't gone specifically into the language with legal. So I welcome any questions that the Planning Commission or the board has for staff. And then I'm happy to introduce the applicant and let you go ahead and move into public discussion.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to start with questions and conversation just real quick with Planning Commission and County Commissioners. Does anybody have any?
I do, and I think I feel like I just want to acknowledge it and identify that I, for one, I feel a little ill prepared for this, and I'd love it if we had county legal counsel present as well, and or a formal response from legal on other ramifications throughout the code with this, the consideration of this change. I also wonder if, you know, per some of the conversation in the preliminary permitting approval, is the timing necessary right now to do this?
I guess to answer that, certainly happy to make sure that we obtain legal review of the exact language, so we could certainly table this until that can be done, if that is desire of everyone to take that opportunity. I think that the timing part is to, I think more maybe is to ask the applicant about their idea of timing. For staff, I would say what this would create as an opportunity within a development to be able to locate this amenity within that development on a tract. The worst, or the converse of that, or the outcome if this wasn't a code amendment that the county feels that has a countywide benefit, is that within that zone district, the conditional use would still prevail, and it would just have to locate the facility on a conforming lot. So through the subdivision process that development is going through, they would have to realize bringing this facility online on a conforming lot versus a tract. So that's kind of, I'm not sure that exactly answers your question, Sarah, but at least kind of talks about the outcomes of whether this would be approved or not, a time that the county feels moving forward with an approval for it. So just kind of talks about the outcomes.
Yeah, and I think more specifically, we haven't so far approved and permitted conditioned on, this working. I mean, I think it's been kind of the contrary, where we have not really identified that this is a necessary part of the subdivision. And I just wonder about specific language in the definition of the code amendment, where it's public service, I'm sorry, I have to pull it up, required to be, that it doesn't quite seem to follow what we've permitted thus far.
These would be standards specific to a conditional use permit. And so it is, I will say,
Okay.
it creates, a little bit of clunkiness that you're pointing out right now for sure. But these would be part of the conditional use permit process that would vet those concerns. I think that you're kind of bringing forward a bit, but there, this is, for lack of a better term, kind of a roundabout way to create the opportunity.
Yeah, I think I have a little bit of hesitation without legal also giving us any kind of insight on this, and to Sarah's point, I guess, what the ramifications could be down the road outside of this one specific development that I think this is coming from. So I guess my initial thought is, let's move forward, let the applicant, speak and give any presentation, answer any questions, and then, we can decide to, I think if we decide to push it to legal, we could have specific questions and or, points that we want to bring up to legal. Does that sound like a good plan for folks?
Heather, this is Kayla.
Kayla.
I don't know if this question may be more to Ann or Paul, but I do like Heather's plan of action. Can we let the applicant present and table the public hearing so that we can vet through legal anything that comes up through that presentation?
Yes, I'm sorry to answer that. Yes, this is a code amendment. It's still a legislative process. Again, the public has brought the code amendment forward, but yes, I mean, we can still table the to a date certain to have legal weigh in on any aspects that you would like to. I would just maybe also, I'm not sure how prepared, I see that Bart is here probably to present for the applicant. So they may be very prepared to talk about the code amendment this evening. But, I would look to the standards, and I think that the staff report, in considering, just as we kind of look at some of the standards, food for thought, and it's certainly something we can talk about with legal, is would these standards have been beneficial? We have very recently done to safety services facility, CUPs, the fire station, and the training facility. And so, the standards themselves seem to support just good planning practices for citing those and the definition. So I think, again, like you said, looking at the ramification of allowing this on tracks through this same vetting process versus lots, I think that's kind of your outstanding idea, because I think overall the standards perhaps aren't, I think that they probably bring forth good questions in making sure that there's kind of uniform review of locating these facilities.
Okay, thanks, Anne. Yeah, let's, unless anybody else has a quick question, let's go ahead and turn it over to the applicant. And whichever of you would like to speak, whether it's Alan or Bart.
I think that would be me. Alan, obviously you're happy to jump in anytime, but I thought I would just address the staff report some and talk about the process. First of all, I guess I'd say that we welcome your opportunity to consult with your legal counsel and make sure you have input from them. That's important. And you should be comfortable with their input. We have put some thought into this. We feel good about the standards and the definition we've articulated, but you should hear that from your own staff as well as you need to be comfortable. I believe the Planning Commission meets every 2 weeks, if I'm correct, in Lake County. So if that could be done on a 2-week turnaround, that would be ideal for us, just because we'd like to keep things moving and find out kind of which direction this is going in, and potentially have an opportunity to offer more input if needed. But I'll let you guys vet that with your schedule. As far as the substance of the proposal, I think Ann's staff report does a good job. And I don't have a whole lot to add to it, except kind of maybe to step back a little bit and explain a little bit more of the context for this request. When we were looking at the particular subdivision application this pertains to in other similar areas in the county, and looking at safety services facility and the standards for those, we found that there really weren't any. But they're conditional uses in almost every zone district in the county, except for, I believe it's the industrial zone district. So in every zone district where this would come up, especially the rural, more far-flung areas of the county where you have large lot, kind of single family residential type zoning prevailing, and you start looking at putting a safety services facility on one of those lots, you kind of have a double-edged sword working against you. One is you have the land use code not really providing much standards at all, except it kind of assumes it's going to be just like any other use in that particular subdivision or development, which again are kind of large lot residential sites, which may not be well suited to a safety services facility. So you have, in one respect, kind of very restrictive but limited guidance, and in the other respect, you have no guidance at all about things like how access should work and utilities and site selection criteria, like what would make a good site for one of these facilities. So we felt like if we could offer an opportunity for the county to help fill in those blanks and provide itself with better guidance for how these kind of sites would be selected, that we'd of course be doing ourselves a favor because we could create more flexibility within this particular subdivision that we're concerned about. But we also would, we believe, be doing the county a favor in that for future sites like this, it would have some guidelines to decide whether it should approve one of these conditional uses. Because again, there are conditional uses in every single zone district. So it arms the county with some tools to measure these by, which we thought was helpful. And we think as far as the standards for approving an amendment to the land development code go, this falls kind of right into the tried and true standards, which is it would promote, we believe, the public health and safety. It enhances the land use code and addresses things, and I think Ann pointed this out pretty well, that it kind of modernizes an aspect of your land use code that's really silent on something right now. And ideally, every permitted use would have a good definition in the land use code. This one has no definition right now. Every permitted use, and you especially see this in land use codes that are wrestling with institutional type uses, public uses, one-off kind of unusual uses. And some of those can be kind of the really obnoxious kind, like, smelters or something like that. And some can be benign, but very unusual, like a safety services facility. Most land use codes have specific criteria for how those are evaluated. And again, we didn't find that in the Lake County code. So this is an opportunity to kind of modernize the code, which I think is consistent with your comprehensive plan goals. And we think, hopefully, though it isn't guaranteed, as in this particular site, it would lead to the development of a facility that would serve the public health and safety. So we think it's consistent with the reasons why you do land use code amendments, and we think it's a good land use code amendment. I don't have any more to add to that. Alan, do you have anything to say?
No, I think you did a great job. The motivation is there. We're educated enough now. I think we're the first group in Lake County to do a fire mitigation plan, and it's really quite disturbing, how much of a risk we all have, especially here in Twin Lakes. And I think we need to do everything we possibly can to protect and preserve lives and property. We intended to go beyond this. Obviously, all of our homes will be sprinklered. We are going to end up putting 2 10,000-gallon cisterns on the property. We've already donated to the Southern Fire Station. Don't think that is enough. Maybe not today, but certainly tomorrow. So to at least have the opportunity to be prepared seems like it's very smart. And I know it's not if, but when we're going to have a fire. And I think all those residents that will be impacted by that will be very thankful to all of us on this Zoom call right now, for being, wise enough to look at all the options possible. So that's it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, I think it helps a little bit to understand that everything's kind of conditional use, and we can evaluate site by site. Any other thoughts and questions? Aaron, go ahead. But we still can't hear you. You can put it in chat, and we'll, if you can chat it in there. Paul, go ahead.
Well, I wonder, Madam Chair, if I could ask the applicant a couple of questions.
Sure.
Bart or Alan, could you explain to all of us what is your motivation for bringing this forward as a code amendment to us?
Sure. The motivation was we were wrestling with the strictures of the code now, and trying to create more flexibility to place this facility within our particular proposed subdivision. And I don't want to make this, a surrogate public hearing about the other application necessarily, because I'm not sure that's quite right, but we were dealing with, having to consider putting a safety for services facility on a lot basically for residential use. Or we had other lands already designated within the project that could potentially serve this, but the requirement that they be on a lot of at least, and we have a zoning for 3-acre lots, made that less flexible than we felt was needed. So this was a way of creating more flexibility for where these could go. And also, just as importantly, creating standards for general site selection, access, and things like that that would help guide that process once we got to the point where we actually had something to apply for. You know, bearing in mind that this isn't a request for a particular facility, because no facility has been designed yet. And, you know, there have been questions about how it would be paid for. There's a lot of cake making to do yet. But we wanted to at least try to establish the guidelines that would help serve that recipe, if we could continue the analogy a little bit. So that was the motivation for this.
Well, if I might continue along those lines, I applaud the fact that all of our use specific standards that are blank need to be not blank. And but I'd say that more of our uses are empty, use specific standards are empty than they are full. So I really like the idea of having some standards, but I guess I'm not quite clear on why the Angel View development is bringing this forward, and perhaps instead of the county bringing it forward for an amendment to the code.
Yeah. Well, we'd be happy to make it an application from the county. But we were tasked with trying to come up with a public use within the project that could have been a park or something like that, but the entire project is basically a park. And the subdivision regulations at the state and the county level speak towards, parks that serve the residents within the neighborhood. And we've got a project that's traversed by trails, and most of the space is preserved for non-development. So we were trying to come up with another public purpose within the project that we felt would benefit the community. This safety services facility has been talked about in different contexts within Angel View. We found what we think is a good site for it, but we needed a way to develop standards for how that site would be approved if we were to actually apply for one there. So that's.
So along those lines, when you say community, who is the community? Is it within the subdivision, or is it have a much larger perspective?
Well, in this case, it has a much larger perspective. It's everyone on that end of the county, out Highway 82, that direction.
Then I guess I'm a little lack of understanding about how you'd want to put a public safety service facility behind a gated community.
I can address that a little bit. So that happens. I mean, I'm from Texas, and a lot of the higher and much larger developments do this. It benefits the residents. It benefits everybody around that area. I think there's one up there in Aspen, which is obviously a lot smaller area for population. Starwood, is that right, Bart?
Starwood has a new firehouse they built about 2 years ago.
Yeah, so this is very common in places, and it's a tremendous benefit for not just the homeowners. I was talking to a new homeowner in Gordon Acres this last weekend, and they had a difficult time even getting insurance because they have one way in and one way out. And you know, the response time by ambulance in Twin Lakes is about 45 minutes today. The average response time in all of Colorado is 9 minutes. So I think it's something that, you know, we're trying to solve a problem. We did this, we originally put forth a plan where we would actually fund the entire fire station. And, you know, it's, to be honest, a little mind-boggling to me that we want to do something to help, and it's becoming such a struggle to get it done. But I come from a background of, I worked, you know, for American Red Cross for many years, and you know, I'm used to disasters and that kind of experience. So I'm certainly very, it's scary to think about what will happen, and we're not ready for it. So what I can tell you and promise you, and I guess there's going to be a newspaper's doing an article. Like, they asked me to reach out and provide some information about Angel View, but Angel View will set a very high standard in terms of carrying our weight, but that's not enough. And so it seems like we should at least, you know, reserve the opportunity for us to help everybody in this area. And to not do so would, quite frankly, be foolish.
Well, thank you, Bart and Alan, for that. I had one other question in mind. And I know that historically, the terms parcel, tract, and lot have all been used interchangeably. Lately, I can see that we're settling on the fact that a lot is generally reserved for the purpose of the zoning. And a tract is something broader than that, such as open space or such as whatever it gets to be determined. But both of them are parcels. I wonder if you follow that thinking, and if that's the way you think.
I think you're generally right, Paul. I think lots are typically where you see vertical development. Tracts are usually something broader than that. Parcels is kind of a more generic term that you don't see used as often in terms of formal subdivision as you do lot versus tract. I think the difference here, or an important thing to keep in mind here, is we're talking about kind of a civic institutional use, which in a lot of places can occur on different types of land, whatever you may call them. And you kind of end up in kind of this nomenclature spiral that at the end of the day doesn't matter very much. I think if you're talking about a civic use, like a safety facilities service, whether it's a parcel, a lot, a tract, a plot, you know, any kind of term you want to come up with, I think the most important thing is at the substantive level, whether it belongs there, and whether the land, that particular piece of land you're deciding to put it on can carry the facility, whether it meets, you know, proper kind of dimensional and good planning practices. And that's what we've tried to focus on. So, and for a civic use, I don't know that there needs to be a magic bright line that it shall be only on a lot, or it must be only on a tract. That you can find a good place for one, you should try to put it there, assuming all the other pieces fall into place.
I think I agree with your thinking about that. And typically these days, over the last 15 or 20 years, I think that tracts have taken on that term as being of a broader purpose. Typically, it's open space. and lots have taken on the definition of being a place for, as you say, vertical development. I do tend to think that it might fall on Ann and me to actually make sure that those definitions are as clear as that.
Fair enough.
So for a little bit of clarification, without the use specific standards, which I have no argument that we need use specific standards for this, and these look great, you know, so far, but without them, is the problem right now that the structure they want to do on Angel View doesn't currently work within the code without the use specific standards? It doesn't work on that parcel that they're trying to do it on. And so this would change it so that you don't have to meet those dimensional standards.
Yeah, the minimum lot size is one of the issues we're confronting. It's the primary obstacle. Where there are lots of other questions about, you know, kind of appropriate site standards and stuff like that, but the minimum lot size issue would prevent this facility from going in the location that we've designated for it, which is near the entrance on the east side of the project. Again, we're kind of getting into Angel View specifics, but during the sketch plan process for Angel View, there was actually one proposed on a larger site on the western end of the project, and it was shot down. And so, but then in preliminary plan, we were asked to reevaluate what part of the project we were going to make available as a public donation. So we went back to the drawing board and we found this area, but it's really basically impossible to get 3 acres out of it because of the way the road alignments work and the engineering that's necessary because of the topography up there. But we found a good location that's between the main Angel View Road and Highway 82, but not on the steep slopes that fall down into the highway. It's a little bench there. It's a couple acres, which is plenty of room for a facility of the type we have in mind, because we're not talking about, you know, a big 6-alarm fire station or something like that. That isn't needed in this part of the county. It's a relatively small facility we think would be appropriate, and we think 2 acres is plenty enough to get it on, but under the current zoning for that area, you're basically left putting it on a single family lot. And it wouldn't fit there. So we tried to get creative and come up with kind of the way to insert a tool into the toolbox that would allow us to accomplish this.
Question for staff. Bart, Mr. Johnson keeps saying that they've been tasked with from your client, Bart, because I don't think that the county did not specify a requirement for or define what that land dedication would be. What would be on that land dedication?
Well, it wasn't specific to this type of facility, but during the preliminary plan process, and coming out of that, or during that process, we were told we needed to give thought how we were going to meet the public land dedication requirements, which is something that didn't come up with sketch plan. So, and we already had a preliminary plan designed, so we had to kind of figure out how that might be addressed.
And you're muted.
It's a requirement of preliminary. It's part of code. So it's
For
just
subdivision?
For subdivision, yes.
An open space. And so, yeah, but what nothing has been permitted necessarily or requested specifically to utilize that open space as far as a facility. And I'm wondering why this might look different than any other HOA that uses a space to store cisterns or dry hydrants or storage of a water truck or whatever other equipment they might have on hand for the community on that parcel or in that subdivision.
Well, part of it from our perspective is Alan's strong belief that it may not be next year, but he'd really like to have an opportunity to contribute towards having a safety facility services building in this area. And it's something that can be dedicated to the public. And obviously the public would have to accept it. You know, we're not trying to create a situation where we can foist something on the public. The public would have to agree, but we at least want to create the opportunity so that if the pieces come together, if Alan can get some fundraisers together and talk to whether it's the fire department or the police department or people behind Lake County Search and Rescue, and come together and create some kind of facility, whether it's a hybrid between, you know, search and rescue and fire uses or ambulance and fire uses, what have you, that if those pieces come together, he'd like the ability to put it in Angel View and is willing to donate the land to do so, and maybe some money as well. So it's a matter of creating that opportunity, which seems to be the kind of the, if you're looking at kind of what we could do to contribute in some kind of public way to the community good out there, that this would be number one on the list. I mean, it certainly would be a better use of that land than accommodating, you know, dry hydrants and cisterns, which they can find other places for if they need to. And I think they've already kind of got those engineered in other places in the project. So it just seemed like the best public use we could come up with. And it's something Alan feels very passionate about.
So I'm gonna back up a little bit because I've been on the planning commission for a long time, and even this application kind of confused me, similar to Paul had a little bit of confusion on how this was coming from who and how it was working and what's going on. So I just want to recap a little bit and just make sure that I understand, and just make sure my planning commissioners understand what this application actually is and means. So it sounds like, so in our use table, there could be different things listed, such as, you know, single family dwelling, bed and breakfast, restaurant, whatever, right? And so in our current code, there's something called safety services, but then the code doesn't, and those are conditional use permit in all of our zone districts except for CI. And the code then doesn't point to what use specific standards that safety services has to meet in order for us to approve the conditional use permit. Now, in the past, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, but in the past, if there's no use specific standards, then we're simply approving a safety services use on a piece of property based on your typical use guidelines or parameters for a CUP, which would be, how does it impact your neighbors? What does it look like? You know, those kinds of things like we've done on the CUPs in the past.
That's correct, Heather.
So, yeah,
It gets reviewed as a CUP with that specific use in mind. I know that we've had in the past applications to amend code and do a conditional use permit. And in that process, we actually did put in the use specific standards into that section. But typically, yes, you are correct that it's the standard.
He kind of paused out. Did he pause out for everybody else too? Okay. Well, I think where he's going with it is that you're cutting out a bit, Paul.
Yeah, maybe I better, I think maybe I better shut up.
No worries. So I think where Paul was going is that there are some uses in our code, and I'd love to think of one off the top of my head right now, but I can't, that have use-specific standards. So in addition to meeting your typical conditional use permit parameters, they also have to meet something specific for that type of use. So this is a proposal to create use-specific standards. And a lot of times when we're doing this kind of amendment to the code, it does come from the county itself. When we're looking at our code and saying, hey, this could use some tweaking, or this could use some clarification, this is where we need to add use-specific standards to this line item for the use table. This specific developer, even though this application technically has nothing to do with AngelView, it does also have to do with AngelView. It will apply to AngelView down the road, but us passing this will not be specific to AngelView. It will be to the code. It'll be new use specific standards to the entire code. What I'm understanding is that the developer is putting this forward because they really have this passion for this emergency services facility to be put within their new subdivision, but that the location that they've chosen doesn't meet minimum lot size requirements for the code. So the current code has minimum lot size requirements, and it wouldn't meet those minimum lot size requirements to develop that parcel. So this use specific standards would allow for a little bit of, I mean, I don't want to use the word variance because it's not as technical as that, but for us to determine that based on the site, based on throughout the conditional use permit process, decide if, hey, it's okay that this site is smaller than a typical lot size because it's being used for this emergency services type use. So what we're deciding here tonight is that A, we like all of the use standards that Anne has worked with the developer and the applicants here to put together, and that we are okay with those changes or specific standards to that new language going into the code. So if I have any of that wrong, somebody can raise their hand and let me know, but I think that covered it for the most part. Okay. So I think that somewhat, I think Commissioner Mudge brought up earlier is obviously not necessarily so specific to the use specific standards. I think that those are fairly cut and dry. It really comes down to that lot decision and whether or not allowing this kind of variance from your lot requirement, if that's going to have any ramifications on us later. Do we want legal to be weighing in on whether they think this could cause concern in the future? But was there anything else to that concern? Because I know you also just brought up kind of the public dedication piece of it. But that's not automatic in this, correct? The public dedication wouldn't become automatic. We'd have to decide that we want it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nobody can make the public take land that it doesn't want.
I just wanted to make sure that the language that we're writing here doesn't say that we will, as long as you meet this, you know, and we're forcing that to happen down the road. Sarah, Commissioner Mudge, did you have any other pieces that you wanted to add to that piece that I brought up about legal?
Yeah, well, I wonder too if the language in here, I mean, not knowing what a facility like that might look like and to what extent it might provide services, I'm wondering if the language that's supplied to us now in the draft isn't broad enough. And I guess I need to go back and review to kind of understand what restrictions there might be if a subdivision wanted to put up a garage to store vehicles that were meant to provide public health and safety services. Because right here, I think it's really just to change that public facility in what I'm kind of reading as like an all-encompassing fire station or police station. And I just wonder if that's even really meeting the intention of having the some flexibility.
I could see that. And I think that it's easy to have it drafted this way because we're thinking of one specific project. And I think that's where it gets hard, right? Because we're all thinking about this angel view that's right in front of us, but how does this language work for any future ideas, and whether they're way smaller than the idea that angel view currently has or bigger, does this language encompass those needs?
Mhm.
And I guess our desire to, well, I guess it's always conditional use permit, so I guess that's okay. Commissioner Fiedler has his hand up too.
Yeah, thanks. And Heather, thanks for that background, and Sarah, Commissioner Mudge as well for digging in. I had a question, and we can push this to later in the discussion if it's like too much of a tangent, but it did catch my eye that this is a use by right within that commercial industrial zone. I was wondering if there was any thought during the development of this amendment about whether this should all be conditional use, or whether that use by right is the right approach. I mean, my understanding is commercial industrials is pretty narrow. I mean, it's not extensive throughout the county. But again, just sort of throw that out for, I guess, either the applicant or staff, about that question of whether we want to have use by right for this, for this code amendment.
So I guess my opinion on that is that when commercial industrial zone district was created, it was kind of created for these types of, I mean, for any kind of minor industrial type business, of which we felt like, like search and rescue and firehouses and, things like that, they kind of fall in line with. So I think that's why. And then on top of that, the county was the primary holder of commercial industrial zoned properties. I guess I don't really feel like in that zone district, I feel like we need to worry so much about having it not be a conditional use permit, but that's my own personal opinion. I don't know how others feel about that.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's mostly that big chunk around the airport, right? Like, so as you're saying, like airport hangars, or I bet it might be good just to, I don't know, think about whether I think there's one little chunk like in Stringtown that I saw on the map, and I don't know, just make sure that there aren't some like surprise little areas that would be used by right.
Yeah, it's just the towing yard in Stringtown and the community park field, ironically, and then the airport property.
Oh, interesting. So those two BOCC like the BOCC parcels by the
Yeah, because they were the only ones that would get on board with rezoning their property to it. I think there were too many individual homeowners property owners that thought they would get commercial taxes, so they wouldn't go along with the rezone. So now, yeah, it's only come up if somebody's willing to do the rezone.
Okay, thanks for that background.
Mm-hmm. So I would love to hear from some of my planning commissioners, and what your thoughts are as far as moving this forward and thoughts on the application itself.
I think a lot of my comments have been repeated elsewhere. I had the same question as Paul, bringing up, the lots versus tracts and how that's kind of more of a modern designation. I know dealing with mapping issues, I've seen lots, tracts, government lots, these apply to a bunch of different situations. So that's where I was just confused and concerned with how this would impact any potential future major or minor subdivisions, because we would have to deal with defining these terms first. And that's where I do want to get legal advice on that.
Okay.
Heather, yeah, like for the rest of the, just hearing the conversations and hearing Bart and Alan, I see why the purpose of building and making that facility for safety. And just reading it is pretty clear, and I'm glad that Ann worked with staff and just building the different standards. But just similar to Bryce and what Sarah raised as well, just getting legal in there, just because we don't know in the future what it would hold. And so just seeing and consulting with them to see what it will look like for us.
Okay, Abby just sent me she's having a little bit of trouble with connection. Her main question is, would any safety services proposal still come through a CUP as a CUP application? And the answer is yes, other than in commercial industrial zoning. It would be a use by right in that zone district as it is right now, unless we change that. And then Aaron is on board with getting legal involved, or getting legal approval or review. Commissioners, any other thoughts on your end?
Heather, this is Kayla. I don't really have anything to add here, except I really am in favor of getting legal online with this and vetting this through with legal before we proceed any further, because I think that there's still just quite a bit of questions that are up in the air that we need to make sure we have our ducks in a row on as well.
Thank you. And I guess I want to clarify just for the applicant. I don't think anybody here is opposed to you creating any kind of safety services facility in Angel View. I think everybody's psyched about that. I think just when we're talking about putting a blanket code amendment forward, we just got to make sure we're vetting the proper channels for that. So if there's nothing else on this, then I would take a motion from my planning commissioners to table this and then Paul, I know that Ann had to go. Maybe commissioners also, maybe somebody knows how long it may take to get legal review as far as trying to put this out to a date certain. Do we want to do the 2 weeks out?
I think we could.
Okay. So when is our next, sorry, I don't have my calendar open. Is our next meeting the 27th? That's what I show.
According to my schedule, yeah.
Okay. So maybe a motion to table this to September 27th.
Yeah,
Would you like to see if any public have any comments?
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know. Do we have any public here? I don't think we have any public here.
Jamie Seifer. I
Jamie
think
Seifer, sorry, Jamie, I see
he's
you.
public.
Hey, I'm public. I don't have any comment at this time. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie. Sorry about that. Okay, I'll take a motion to table this to the 27th.
All right, I move to table file 21-24 to September 27th.
Okay, can I get a second? Oh, Aaron seconds. Okay, all in favor to table to 27th? Aye.
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 Thank you. All right, thank you. That will move us down to the old business. And there are 2 items on here, the backcountry zone update, which I think Ann just sent us right before the meeting, the newer version, most recent draft of the new code for backcountry zoning. So if we can look at that. Aaron and I have been going back and forth on a flyer creation, and we're both a little bit stuck on, hey, what should the questions, the FAQ questions be on that flyer that gets sent out? So if Planning Commission can, is good, I would love to forward that out to you guys and, commissioners too. And if anybody has some thoughts on what other information should be provided in this flyer as far as answering questions and such. Aaron and I will keep plugging things in and try to make it look nice for the next meeting. So I'll make sure we send you just a very draft version of that right now. And if you guys can take a look at that over the next week, that'd be awesome. And then I think that was it for the backcountry zone update as far as right now, just because Anne's not here. Oh, go ahead, Bryce.
Yeah, I guess Ann would be able to answer this better, but we think, and you and Aaron, do you think you're ready to kind of get rolling on this by next meeting if we kind of are prepared and prepare ahead of time? I'm just waiting to pull the trigger on getting that mailing list and everything.
Yeah.
I have an older version, but going to run it again as soon as we're ready to go. So it's the most recent information available.
So I think that, I mean, I would like to say we are, but I think Anne's got to weigh in on that more. And I think Aaron and I want to make sure that that flyer is good. So I guess it depends on how much feedback we get this week on the flyer to make sure we have that mail out ready. I think we have to commit to a date for the community information meeting too, because we'd want to put that in there as well. So I'll make a note right now to get with Anne and check on that and see, I'll try to check with her tomorrow and find out if we think it's that or if we're talking about the first time in October.
Yeah, just let me know, I suppose. I guess I'll hear from you guys when we're ready to go. But just so everyone has this reference point, I know Jeff had mentioned that he has a mailing service. I have, as of now, 1,222 accounts that need to be notified. So
Yeah, that makes sense. And Aaron pointed out too that the website, we need to make sure that we have some sort of page on the website that can be accessed from the county website on this. And I'm wondering, I guess, if it could just be a link to the draft code and a link to our flyer page. And then just in the flyer page could include the community meeting date. And that could just be what the county puts on their website.
I see no reason why not. That's sort of something that a meet can help us do. And our new employee, John Costello, is getting better and better versed at this.
Okay, cool.
I think I can talk to you, but you can't see me. You don't get both.
It's okay though. Okay, so anybody else have anything else on backcountry? Does that seem like a good plan forward? Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to like move screens around to see what the next one is. Oh, updates from staff and the board. I don't know if our board knows what that's on there for. Or Paul.
I'd like to try and think of some updates that I am sometimes a little reluctant to update you on some of the things that staff is talking to potential applicants about, because it really, in doing that, we sometimes give you an expectation that doesn't actually pan out. But I think you've heard that the gateway proposal is probably coming back. We don't really know when that's actually going to happen, and how that's going to happen. And I think that there's some very serious conversation about our new House Bill 1271, which provides us with a considerable amount of funding for affordable housing studies and plannings, and even
Leave us on the hook. Jeez, that was suspenseful. I'll chime in on that and maybe more concretely, there is an opportunity to apply for funding through DOLA. The board intends to engage with SCED, our South Central Economic Development District, and staff that they have there to increase our capacity in developing this application for us. The staff person that we intend to engage with has extensive background in planning and housing issues, which is super exciting. He's been working with Anne on some of this language, and we'll get feedback from the coalition and you guys as well. But I think that is really concrete and has been very exciting for the board. So good news, increasing capacity there.
Hey, just to clarify, is this making funding available for studying this issue or actually addressing this issue, or both?
So as an example, there are 4 things that we are likely to outline in the application for funding. One of those is cleaning up the entitlement work on county-owned property. And so it's that development and planning of projects to get them ready to then be competitive and eligible to apply for implementation dollars. And those are things, Michael at SCED as well as DOLA understands and kind of has identified and really laid out some of the nuances there in that. Items like that. Sorry, I hope that's a good example. So
Yeah,
it's more development than planning and like a broad, it's
Okay.
identifying very specific like policy approaches, and we want to do things with our county on land, and so then developing those to a point that we're ready to kind of launch from to implement.
Cool. It sounds like that'll fill the gap between where we are
Yes,
and how far we need to go to get things done.
that is the hope.
Cool.
I think I've summed that up well, but if Kayla or Jeff want to chime in there with anything else.
I'll just say quickly, I mean, so the way it's been described to us by DOLA is, there are some eligibility criteria to get the larger implementation grants. So Bryce, to your question about, is this planning or doing? And those eligibility criteria are a list of policies that jurisdictions have to have in place to be eligible. So the planning grant is targeted towards moving jurisdictions towards ticking the box on those eligible, those policies that make you eligible. So it's not completely open-ended in terms of what there or I mean, it's probably open-ended in terms of what you put in the application, but their criteria are that DOLA's success will be how many jurisdictions ticked the eligibility boxes for the larger implementation grants that are coming next year.
Got it. Thank you, Jeff. That makes sense.
I just wrote in the chat, we should be sure to forward a draft of that to you all. It is due the 20th, so we only have a short amount of time to complete. It's been thought about for a while longer though. This is not like, this did not come up yesterday. So.
All right, awesome. Okay, well, it sounds like I'll send you a few things after this meeting. Any other questions or updates, or it's only 5:12. I mean, we could hang out for another 45 minutes if we want.
I don't know if this is like really, I mean, I do have a couple of other lingering questions on backcountry stuff. And one thing that came up in the Forest Health Council meeting this afternoon on wilderness fuel mitigation applications, or really the lack thereof to apply any fuel mitigation prescription to any wilderness areas made me think about looking at our backcountry zoning and, you know, just really being cognizant of whether or not we want to follow suit there. And like kind of that dichotomy of considering any fuel mitigation or require, I mean, I don't imagine that we'd require any, but I just, something I hadn't quite framed in that way in my mind before.
I think, Sarah, there is discussion in the zone district document. The defensible space.
On that, right. I just wanted to I just wanted to reiterate, I think we did address it pretty well, but and then I had a what was my other thing? Oh, I wondered about how I think this is a question for staff and legal, like if we can limit our applications or permitting for this in like a first year so that we can really develop a way that we can enforce and kind of monitor these things well. I imagine people going up on ATVs to places, and that takes a lot of time.
Good question, Sarah. And good point as well. I don't think we're going to get a rush, but we might.
And I'll add that to my questions with Anne as far as her thoughts on that. All right, cool. Any other thoughts or questions or motions to adjourn? Anything like that?
We only got 2 planning commissioners that are audible.
I know. I feel like Aaron's,
All right.
I feel like Aaron's typing it up. Aaron's
There
moving
you
to
go.
adjourn. Aaron's moving to adjourn. I just need a second.
I second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Thank you guys. Have a really great night.
All right. Good night.
Thanks. Bye-bye.